Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla González and this is Interviews from Caracas. Today we are talking to Javier Rivas, a professor on combat systems, on the Venezuelan stick fighting, or also called Juego de Garrote. Hello Javier, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what is the Venezuelan stick fighting?
Venezuelan stick fighting, or Juego de Garrote, is it is a traditional, our top-to-nose fighting method. It is said that it is the response of the Venezuelan pueblo, the Venezuelan people, to the question of self-defense. But it might be much more than that. It is our cultural highest referent, referring to our ways of being, our way of fighting, our way of moving. So it is many things.
So tell us about the cane that you have here with you today and the methods used, the technique that is used.
Okay, this cane is made of flor amarillo, or araguané. It is our national tree, and it is made by a very ancient method, which consists on cutting it in the right moment of the moon cycle.
But tell us, for example, how do you use it in a combat? Is it contact, close contact? How does it work?
So it is cut in that moment of the moon. It is cooked a little bit, so it throws away the external part, and then it is left to on the outside for about 30 days, maybe more, depending on the stick. Then it is straightened if needed, and then it is polished and all prepared. This is not a branch. This is a stem, which make every garrote a unique piece of art. They also tend to have curves and some unique shapes, because they are not branches or the heart of a trunk that you could make straight. So they are then, well, this one is carved and burned. The sticks for fighting are su, and sometimes they are even rezado. They pray on it, so it has some special properties.
It has a lot of connections to the culture as well.
Yeah, it has.
So tell us, how do you see the fighting?
Well, the garrote fighting is a very complete and fully operative and even mathematically and geometrically perfect technique. It has a lot of variety. I think it is still very pertinent to our reality, and it is definitely not a martial art as such, right? Martial arts are the product of transcultural process that took place about World War II, when especially the Japanese and then the Chinese after that saw the necessity of implementing educational programs on the traditional techniques that they were losing because of a lot of regulations that forbid the practice of those traditions. So martial arts are referred to massive practices, to sport practices, also to the military. Stick fighting, as all the arts in Latin America, are civil arts, and they are called games, juegos, because the pedagogic and didactic structure is different than the military training. As the military make massive training, which purpose is to program soldiers to respond in a linear manner. Games, traditional Latin American fighting games, are taught in small groups following a variety of codes and intuitive rules, in a manner of speaking.
Excuse me, can we see other manifestations of this fighting in Brazil or Colombia, Argentina?
Garrote is autochthonous of Venezuela, right? So Colombian stick fighting comes from Venezuelan stick fighting to the point it is called reformed Venezuelan stick fighting. And in Brazil, the manifestation that survived was capoeira, and there is the maculele, which is a dance which has a deep structure, which uses 2 sticks, 2 hands, and it has a very interesting purpose of preparing warriors for war by using music and rhythms. In Argentina, we have knowledge of riña criolla. They use knives, they use the poncho, they use, I think they use a whip and boleadoras. In Venezuela, historically it was an evolutionary process. It started when, in the period of the conquest, when indigenous people had contact with foreign technology. At the beginning, it was said that they would touch that incredible instrument they called sword with their hands, and they would cut themselves and they wouldn't understand it. After, as the Spanish modified their technology to be more able to go through to this very different terrain, indigenous people learned to use long swords and estoque de 7 cuartas, and many others, the cane, to fight back. And even though they wouldn't survive this clash process, they basically took some techniques and some notions, basic notions and fundamentals of European methods, and integrated to the way of fighting. So lines and geometrical figures and the concept of wielding itself became part of fighting methods.
Can you explain a bit more about these lines that you were referring to? How does that connect to the practice?
Stick fighting teaching is based on a cross that is drawn in the floor, in the ground, that will guide the movements of the apprentices. And these lines, this square that is drawn, it mutates, it changes, it becomes a circle, it becomes a cross, it becomes an X, and it has many interpretations all over the country and the styles of stick fighting. African population that was brought to Venezuela as slaves also gave their part to the stick fighting development. They brought the ambidextrous way. They brought the playfulness element, which is very important for the formation. I mean, a stick fighting apprentice doesn't go through grades and is not recognized by degrees. The moment on which an apprentice becomes a stick fighter itself and not a practitioner, it's a moment, a specific moment on which he starts not only to be recognized by a community, by not being taken care of. I mean, they say, when I don't have to be careful with you, because I know I have the trust to throw a blow on you and you will dodge it, then I know you are a stick fighter. Before
So would you say it's not just a practice, not just a sport, as anyone would say, but also a way of life, like a culture?
It is a culture. The technical development, which is a very serious object of research for us, depends. I mean, the technical aspect depends on the cultural aspect. To be a stick fighter, it is necessary to develop certain cognitive and socio-cultural and psychoaffective competences, if we call them in a manner, that otherwise would leave you with a set of techniques that wouldn't be useful for you.
So how does it connect to the Tamunangue dance, the traditions in Estado Lara, around Venezuela?
Well, popular saying says that the spirit of stick fighting, which is taken as a duende, not as in a leprechaun manner, but more like in a living spirit who doesn't have a body, but it's still alive, hid within Tamunanga in order to survive. Because after the conquest, after the time of independence also, I mean, all along the history, stick fighting was forbidden, was chased. Stick fighters were chased to be killed. I mean, they were considered dangerous by obvious reasons. I mean, they were quite superior. Venezuelans, without nice technology, armory, or military training, they developed superior strategies for squads. They developed a superior technique. I mean, they had to compensate the whole technology and ideas that Spaniards brought back. Respond with ability, skills, techniques, new interpretations, so and very strong-willed fighters.
So tell me, Javier, how does the connection with the family work in Garrote, in a Garrotero culture? Do a father get to explain to his children about Garrote, or is that still a taboo?
There are two factors. The first is that Garrote was a secret practice, and then it became a discreet practice. In the way that people knew that there were stick fighters, and there was a stick fighting technique which wasn't reachable by anyone who wanted, but to a lucky person who was born in the environment. A father would not teach his son. There is no figure as a sensei or a shifu like in the martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
But a compadre de mi padre, okay, a very good friend of my father, who teach me if I went there by reference of my father. I mean, it was at that time, and maybe it's still, there was the tradition, there was the rule that a kid wouldn't lay a hand on his father, so a father could not teach his son. Maybe a grandfather, there are exceptions, there might be parents that there's their children, but it was not a custom. The sons were brought by reference to a person who knew, to a stick fighter who was willing to teach, because many stick fighters died without leaving any proof that they were stick fighters, except the knowledge of that they were.
Like their fathers on their deathbeds telling their children that they were fighters.
Fathers on their beds told their children, "Hey, your brother knows stick fighting, so hey, and your brother knows stick fighting, so you both practice." And then he passed away. Hey, my father died.
And how has it been transformed until the present time?
The middle of the 20th century, there have been many historical moments, very historical moments. The first was when Mercedes Perez decided to openly teach people. He said that Garrote, he considered Garrote was dying, and that it was a treasure. He said his words were, it is dusted gold. It is a treasure that has to be shared with people. So he taught whomever wanted to learn, and it was a complete break with the tradition of the time. Eduardo Sanoja was one of the masters that took over Mercedes Perez, together with the generation of Dani Burgos and Emilio Romero, which was the rescuer of the Garrote making tradition, which was almost lost. Later we talk about why. The importance of Eduardo Sanoja's work was that he was the first to pinpoint on Garrote. He was the first who wrote a book on stick fighting, who made a research and register all the documents that were he wrote 3 books. The first was the Black Book, which described the stick fighting tradition, and made a first proposal, a first pedagogical proposal of how many hours a person could take of a program. The second was El Garrote in Artes y Letras, which was destined to point the spread pieces of Venezuelan tradition of Garrote that was in literature, in historical records. And the third was the Bibliohemerografía, which is a referential document that researchers can use to know where to look for all documents and texts that would give account of Garrote.
And how has been the promotion so far? Are we close to losing this art?
Well, my teacher said and still says that if you take a bus and put all the stick fighters in it, and it has an accident, then the stick fighting tradition finally dies. We made a register of all the stick fighters at a national encounter in about 3 years ago. There were no more than 30 stick fighters registered. Of course, there were others that weren't registered, but actual stick fighters, there are no more than 20. Practitioners, there are no more than 50, I think, and I am exaggerating the number by far. Apprentices, there are no more than 20 active, I think. So, of course, for stick fighters, it is not a matter of being active or inactive. I mean, it is something that is given to you, so maybe you use it or not, and that's it, and that makes you a stick fighter. The sole fact of having it.
And how do you see the new generations and their connection to Garrote? Are they interested in this? Can they go to a place now in Venezuela and learn about it? Not just the practice, but also the culture, how to live the practice.
The strongest spreading culture or spreading center has been and is La Piedad y el Tocuyo in Lara State, in the Lara province, because regardless, there are many garroteros hidden, old people, very old people in the mountains in many other places. Stick fighting was, although it is considered of Lara, it was a tradition of all Venezuela. In La Piedad there are many masters that they teach, but they say the new generation are not interested but in foreign propagandistic martial arts. In Caracas, so there they have a group in the Museo de Barquisimeto. There is the patio at the house of Dani Burgos, one of the masters that deserve the highest ranks, if there were any. And in in the house of Eduardo Sanoja, there is still operative their patio, their place of practice.
Yeah.
In Caracas, there is the Jeve Negro Foundation. They are the responsible of, or they have taken the responsibility of spreading stick fighting, and they made some research, and they are in charge of teaching people for free. There is also the patio of Ambrosio Aguilar. It operates on the Parque Los Caobos. They teach people. I don't know if they charge.
And what will they say, and what will you think, if this Garrote and Venezuela stick fighting becomes a cultural heritage? Will it work? Will it help preserve a traditional, a connection for our people connected to ways of defending and ways of living?
For Garrote to survive, it is mandatory two things. The first is for it to be object of cultural policy part of the state. I mean, Tamunangue was declared a national heritage, but Garrote, it is unknown, basically. So cultural policies, it is necessary to pay more attention to it. The other condition is for it to be object of financial development, a stable market. I mean, every person who had a bit of knowledge in business knows that for an activity like that to survive, it is necessary to have a market for it to be supported.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, Javier, but thank you very much for being with us and discussing this very important issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've been talking to Javier Rivas, a professor in combat systems, on the Venezuelan stick fighting or Juego de Garrote and how it connects a society with its cultural heritage and how to promote it. This is Interviews from Caracas. I'm Carla González, and until the next time.